Beautiful Sunday morning. I hope by now you've checked out this YouTube channel, parts 1, parts 2, and parts 3 of reinventing the public school system. At this point, I keep on hearing more and more bad news. It leads me to express this to you. Not reinventing the public schools, not doing the extraordinary. Parents are failing. What I'd like to emphasize today is what's very commonly known as groupthink. The famous mantra meme that you see out on the internet goes like this. When everyone's thinking alike, someone is not thinking. This motivates me to do what I did in 2013. A lot of people think that this is a school's choice issue to resolve the emotional and financial bankruptcy of government-run schools. As I sit here in Key Biscayne in a city park, I spent a lot of time thinking of the only idea. There's only one idea, and it's not reform. It's not school choice. Schools have a role. Homeschooling has a role. And private schools have a role to allow parents the choice to properly educate their children. Each one has different motivations for doing so. But you still are spending 50% of your real estate taxes on the school district. Can't emphasize that enough. So you'll still blow your money. So what are we going to do about it? Groupthink says we need to vacate the school system, as if that isn't already happening. Of course it's happening. It's been happening for 40 years. People are slowly heading to private schools. There are some that just go to private schools right away. A lot of faith-based decisions are made for private school just for that purpose alone. Same with homeschooling. A lot of kids were bullied. There's now the other issue, which is precipitous. It's been going on for decades. Bullying, school violence, school shootings. If everyone's thinking alike, and you just want to ban guns, well, only criminals and the derelict have guns. I think it's pretty obvious that at this point, arming staff, putting up signs, letting the deranged know that in this school we protect our students using deadly force. It seems obvious to me, states have done it, and they don't have school shootings. I'm not the only one who sees the groupthink. I'm not the person who's not thinking. I've actually done something about it, which is why I'm doing these videos. Most of the people who get involved in groupthink might have their children's best interests in mind. But the leaders, they end up pushing books. They end up encouraging us to do things that try to convince school boards to think about parents and their children, as if the school board has that interest.
Transgender book, 17 copies. Being Jazz, another transgender book, 31 copies. The Other Boy, another transgender book, 39 copies. You know what was not in the library at Loudoun County Public Schools? The rise and fall of the Third Reich, the actual history of how Nazi Germany came to be and how the Holocaust came to be. They're completely gaslighting parents with lies, and they think they're stupid.
Trying to lay low, but after reading the contents of this bill, I could not believe it, and I had to speak out because the content of the bill is just disgusting, and it's terribly oppressive and racist. It removes all hope from people of color. It pits kids, groups kids, and pits them against each other. And so after reading it, I had to speak out.
So you talk about the contents of this bill. There's a portion of it that says ethnic studies analyzes the ways in which race and racism have been and continue to be powerful social, cultural, and political forces, and the connection of race to the stratification of other groups.
What you typically think of is ethnic studies. You think you're going to learn about the beauty of different ethnicities and it's going to provide inspiration. And somehow when we learn about each other's differences, it brings us together. We learn.
Don't we want our children to know that slavery was wrong as I fight against slavery today that still exists?
Bills like this make schools more hostile, and make no mistake, it results in hate, bigotry, and yes, sometimes death.
The school board interest is simply what all political interests are. Stay in power, collect a check, control, stay in power, and collect a check, and be available for privy information that you can profit off of while nobody knows. In the meantime, publishing industries, textbook publishing industry in particular, drive their agenda. You think it's because they are inspired or motivated by a particular line of thought. No, they just want to get their book in the school system. Once you're in the school system, there's money to be made. A lot of books just end up in the public library, or textbooks, simply the old adage, money. If your book is not in the school system and you can push an agenda that gets your books in the school system, you're going to push the agenda whether you believe in the agenda or not. Now remember Rolette Elementary, who was the first school after my attempt failed, was the first school to convert in Florida history. Brian Flynn, their principal at the time, went on to lead them as consultants after he retired from the Manatee School District. Since then, they have purchased a middle school, so they have 2 schools. But because they use the teacher vote in the existing law, the very vote that I want to eliminate in order for this to really pick support apart from the school district, the teachers only supported this endeavor, I find out now, by controlling the majority of board seats. In other words, there's bureaucrats in the Rolette Elementary and Middle School Board of Directors, and only 2 members are chosen from parents. That is what I left behind with this attempt to create a legal precedent that the Republican Party of Florida has failed to amend. By leaving the teachers' vote in the conversion school law, Florida Parent Empowerment Law 1002-33, Clause 3B. 3B is the clause that converts to charter. I've said many times, the reason we need to eliminate the word charter is that the objections are profound. A lot of people want to argue that charter is not the answer, or they've already been to charter, or they heard terrible things about charter, when in fact what I'm proposing is not charter. Charter pays rents to charter school developers. They build the buildings, and therefore charge the parents rent, and the money comes from the state of Florida's Board of Education fund for charter schools. These are conversion schools that I believe should be called parent guardianship schools, because they don't pay rent, because they're taking over district-run schools. But they should be wholly represented by parents. In the case of Rolette, as you can see by this photo, the minority of parents sit on the board. Majority are bureaucrats. The fact is, nobody thinks parents can take over the public school system. Many parents believe they can't take over the public school system, nor do they want to. Look at Ken Langone, founder of Home Depot. Listen to what he says.
The kids that graduated from high school in New York City last year, it's pathetic. These poor kids are being gypped. Forget about equality, forget about getting things done. These poor kids, they're going to have a chance to compete if they're equipped, if they have the tools. Public education in America today is an abomination. It's terrible. It's not bad, it's terrible. And what are we doing about it? Nothing.
He expresses in tone and manner the angst that I have, the sense of urgency that I have. Charter's been around since 1979. It would only appease the school district in the case of school overcrowding. Sure, charter can exist. Sure, homeschooling can exist. Sure, private schools will continue to exist. But it only helps with the overcrowding in the public school system. Therefore, it'll always remain between 10%, maximum 20%. But we don't have the time, do we, as a country? Our kids are being indoctrinated. You can see the Republican Party's elected officials screaming and yelling at the federal level. They're now proposing a federal parental bill of rights that you saw recently passed in Florida under Governor Ron DeSantis.
Case of moms and dads saying we've had it with the woke curriculum.
Amid concerns over lesson plans, spending priorities, and campus violence, House Republicans are proposing what they call the Parents' Bill of Rights, meant to give parents more insight into what happens inside public school classrooms.
Consider H.R. 5.
On Capitol Hill today, Republicans and Democrats clashed in a hearing.
I've heard some of my colleagues say that this is not about banning books, but give me a break. Look what's happening in this country. Republican-led legislatures are going on a censorship spree that would make the Chinese Communist Party blush.
You want the federal government imposing parental bill of rights? People of my intent, people of my knowledge, people of my angst, people of willingness to reinvent the public school system, understand that the socialized school system has failed miserably. If we continue at this pace, all our kids will be indoctrinated into little socialists who become adult socialists who won't reproduce. In the end, it's political bipolarity. There's always been an agenda to reduce the population of the world. It's always been run by communists. It's always been around. It's always had money. It's always had power. The fact is that we could give an acre of land for every person on earth that will fit in the state of Alaska. Alaska's an enormous state. But if we have a population crash and the vast majority of people are really poor, what becomes of our country? What becomes of all those social security, social programs that the Democrats fought so hard for? There'll be nobody to pay for them, especially if the few who are reproducing are not skilled. They have no skills to succeed. They have no skills to sustain nuclear families. Ken Langone makes that very clear. He sees the desperate nature of this, as I do. If he reads this, if he sees this, and reads my website, parentguardianshipschool.com, someone forward it to him. If anybody knows Ken Langone, he might be my only source, my only opportunity to get this through to someone who actually could do something about it. Because I'm just crying into the wilderness to a bunch of people who can't see the forest through the trees.